Story number 1. Debrief Room. I was assigned to conduct a routine quarterly audit of physical evidence logged under closed administrative violation cases at the regional facility in Ulster County. The work was scheduled for 3 days in mid-October of 2023, and I arrived on site at 8:30 in the morning with standard documentation and inventory checklists. The facility supervisor provided building access and confirmed that all items in subsection D had been cleared for review under normal handling protocols. I began the audit in the northwest corner of the storage wing, working through shelves of tagged materials in numerical order. Most items were mundane: confiscated documents, recording devices, office equipment from workplace compliance cases that had been resolved years prior. The environment was climate-controlled and quiet. I had completed nearly 200 entries by early afternoon without incident. Item 712 was a standard office telephone, beige plastic, rotary dial, logged from a 2019 case involving unauthorized call monitoring at a private insurance firm. The tag indicated it had been submitted as evidence of improper surveillance and had tested negative for active electronics at intake. When I lifted it from the shelf to verify the serial number against the log, I noticed a low hum coming from the handset. I set the phone on the examination table and confirmed that it had no power source connected and no line jack attached. The hum was faint but steady, a single tone with no variation. I documented the discrepancy in my notes and photographed the item from 3 angles as required by audit procedure. Then I contacted the original case officer, whose information was listed in the file, to verify whether the item description matched its current condition. The case officer, a senior investigator named Brennan, who had since transferred to the Albany office, returned my call within 20 minutes. He confirmed that the phone had been completely inert at intake, with no battery compartment and no internal power supply. He told me the case had been closed administratively after the firm agreed to a settlement and that the evidence had been logged for retention only. He advised me to flag the item for technical review and continue the audit as scheduled. I moved the phone to a separate table designated for flagged materials and resumed my work. By 4 in the afternoon, I had processed another 90 items. Then I noticed a second sound, similar in tone to the first, but slightly higher in pitch. It was coming from item 803, a small desk fan that had been logged in a 2020 case involving ventilation code violations at a printing facility. The fan had no plug attached and no visible battery housing. I documented it and placed it on the flag table next to the telephone. Within the next hour, 2 more items began emitting the same type of low-frequency hum. One was a cassette recorder from a 2018 case. The other was an electric pencil sharpener from 2017. All 4 objects were from unrelated cases, different industries, different counties. None of them had any apparent power source. I rechecked the logs to confirm that all had been documented as inactive at the time of intake. The records matched. I contacted the facility supervisor and requested guidance. He came down to subsection D and observed the items himself. He agreed that the situation was irregular and told me to continue documenting while he consulted with regional command. I returned to the examination table and noted the time, the items involved, and the nature of the emissions. The hum from all 4 objects was now audible from across the room. By 6:15 in the evening, the emissions had increased in volume. I could feel them as much as hear them, a pressure in my chest and behind my eyes. The supervisor had not returned, and my calls to his office went unanswered. I made the decision to isolate the items per containment guidelines and move them into a wire storage cage at the far end of the subsection. I locked the cage and stepped back. The hums did not diminish. Instead, they began to synchronize. The tones shifted slightly, adjusting in pitch until they aligned into a single rhythmic pattern, a steady pulse that repeated every 4 seconds. I activated the standard suppression equipment stored in the subsection, a white noise generator, and an electromagnetic dampening unit that had been installed during the facility's last safety upgrade. Neither device had any effect. The pulse continued, regular and unbroken. I attempted to contact the supervisor again and received no response. I checked my phone and found that I had no signal, which was unusual but not unheard of in the lower sections of the building. I decided to evacuate the subsection and seal it without waiting for clearance. I retrieved my documentation, turned off the overhead lights, and locked the access door behind me. I used the manual override to engage the environmental seal, which closed the ventilation ducts and activated the magnetic lock on the exterior frame. I went upstairs to the main office and found it empty. The supervisor's coat was still on his chair, but he was not in the building. I called regional command from the desk phone and reported the situation to the duty officer, who told me to remain on site and wait for instruction. I stayed in the office until just after midnight, when a team arrived from the Central Division. They did not ask me to accompany them into subsection D. They told me to go home and report to my supervisor the following morning. Regional command arrived at the facility 6 hours later with additional personnel and equipment. I was not present for their assessment. I received a call at 9 in the morning, instructing me to submit my original audit paperwork and to include no supplementary notes or observations beyond what had been recorded in the standard log. The subsection was reclassified as temporarily restricted pending external review. I was reassigned to administrative duties at a satellite office in Dutchess County effective immediately. My new assignment involved filing and data entry for archived personnel records. I was told the reassignment was unrelated to the audit and that my work in Ulster County had been satisfactory. I have received no further communication regarding the items or the incident. The subsection remains sealed. My access credentials for the regional facility were deactivated on October 24, 2023, and I have not been asked to return. Story number 2. Maintenance log. I arrived at the county courthouse in Garfield County at 7:15 in the evening on November 12, 2023, responding to an emergency call about complete HVAC failure in the basement records archive. The building supervisor, a woman named Carol Hendricks, met me at the service entrance. She was visibly uncomfortable and kept her arms crossed tightly against the cold. She explained that all 3 staff members who had gone down to check the system that afternoon had returned within minutes, refused to speak about what they saw, and immediately submitted resignation letters. 2 of them had worked for the county for over 15 years. One left her coat and purse in the building. Carol said she tried to ask what happened, but each of them just shook their heads and walked out to their vehicles. She showed me the resignation letters. They were all dated and signed, but none of them included a reason for leaving. I took my tools and the building master key and descended the southwest stairwell alone. The basement hallway was colder than it should have been. The mechanical room door was at the far end, past the records archive and 2 storage rooms. When I reached it, I found the door sealed from the inside, with what appeared to be expanding foam insulation applied in layers over a period of weeks or months. The foam had hardened in uneven ridges, and I could see at least 4 distinct application lines where new material had been added over old. Carol's maintenance logs, which she had given me upstairs, showed daily inspections of the mechanical room through the previous Friday, all signed off without incident. I used a utility knife and a pry bar to cut through the seal. It took nearly 20 minutes. The foam was dense and had bonded to both the door and the frame. When I finally pulled the door open, I found the HVAC unit running normally. The temperature reading on the control panel showed 72 degrees. The airflow was steady. But the main vent line had been disconnected from its original route and rerouted into a section of ductwork that, according to all building plans Carol had provided, and my own measurements of the foundation should not physically exist within the courthouse footprint. I followed the unauthorized ductwork. It ran along the ceiling for 8 feet, then dropped down into the floor where someone had broken through the concrete. Below that was a hand-excavated tunnel, approximately 4 feet high and 3 feet wide, reinforced with courtroom furniture. I recognized witness benches and sections of oak railing. The ductwork continued through the tunnel, secured to the ceiling with wire and metal brackets. I had to crouch to move through the space. The air smelled like damp earth and something else I could not identify. The tunnel ran straight for approximately 40 feet, then opened into a small chamber roughly 8 feet by 10 feet, with a ceiling just tall enough for me to stand upright. The chamber contained a desk, a filing cabinet, and a cot with bedding that was still warm to the touch. A battery-powered lantern sat on the desk next to a thermos and a stack of papers. The filing cabinet contained personnel records for county employees. I opened the top drawer and found files organized alphabetically. Each file included a standard employment record, a photograph, and a death certificate. The death dates ranged from 1971 to 2018. Beneath each death certificate were handwritten notes, updated weekly, describing current activities and locations within the building. The handwriting was the same in every file. The most recent entry in the file I was holding was dated November 11, 2023. It noted that the subject had been observed in the second-floor hallway near the clerk's office at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon. I opened 4 more files. All of them followed the same pattern. All of them had been updated within the last week. I heard footsteps approaching from deeper in the tunnel system. They were slow and evenly spaced. I could not tell how far away they were. I made the decision to return to the surface immediately. I left the file drawer open and moved back through the tunnel as quickly as I could without making noise. When I reached the mechanical room, I shut the door behind me and went upstairs. Carol was waiting in the hallway near the service entrance. I told her the HVAC unit was irreparable due to structural damage and that the basement should be sealed until a full inspection could be conducted. She asked what kind of structural damage. I said I would include it in my report and that she should contact the county facilities director in the morning. She did not ask anything else. I submitted my invoice for system condemnation the following day. I received payment within 72 hours, along with a contract stipulation that requires me to refuse any future service calls to that address without written explanation. The stipulation was added as an addendum to my standard service agreement and included a non-disclosure clause with financial penalties for violation. The courthouse was closed for renovation 4 days later. I saw the notice in the local paper. The article said the building would be closed for 6 months for electrical and structural upgrades. No other details were provided. 2 weeks after that, I was contacted by a regional supervisor I had never met. He called my business line and identified himself as District Coordinator for Facilities Management, though I could find no record of that title in any county directory. He thanked me for my discretion and provided a phone number to call if I ever accessed the space again. He did not specify which space he meant. I wrote the number down. I have not called it. I still receive automated payment deposits on the 15th of each month for maintenance services I do not perform at a location I do not visit. The payment amount is consistent with a monthly service contract, though I never signed one. The deposits are labeled as routine HVAC maintenance for Garfield County Courthouse. The incident was logged in my personal records as a system condemnation and archived under standard contract closure procedures. Story number 3, dispatch delay. I was working the overnight quality assurance shift at the Regional Dispatch Center in Central Virginia, monitoring recorded emergency calls for compliance and training purposes. The work was routine. Most nights I reviewed 15 to 20 calls, flagged minor procedural gaps, and compiled notes for the training coordinator. The building was nearly empty after midnight. Just myself, a dispatcher on active duty 2 floors down, and the security contractor who made rounds every 2 hours. At approximately 2:15 in the morning, I flagged a 911 call from 3 nights prior that had been marked for routine review but showed an unusually long hold time before dispatcher response. The call had been logged as low priority, no unit dispatched, no follow-up required. The hold time was listed as 47 seconds. That was long enough to warrant a compliance note, so I cued the audio and started the playback. The call audio contained a woman reporting an intruder in her residence, but her voice exhibited a flat affect inconsistent with the claimed emergency, and I noted she provided her address in reverse numerical order. She said, "There is someone in my house, I need help. My address is 7043 Belmont Road." No stress in her voice, no background noise, no breathing between words. Just the statement, delivered like she was reading from a script she had no interest in. I replayed it twice, the same flatness, the same reversed number format. I cross-referenced the address with dispatch logs and found no unit had been sent, no callback had been made, and the incident number appeared in our system twice with different timestamps separated by 4 years. The first entry was from October of 2019. The second was from the call I had just reviewed, October of 2023. Both entries listed the same dispatcher ID, but that dispatcher had transferred to a different region in 2021. I checked her personnel file, no note of her returning, no temporary assignment. The entries should not have matched. Following protocol, I attempted to verify the address through county records and discovered the residence had been condemned and demolished 16 months before the call was placed. The county assessor database showed the structure had been removed in June of 2022 due to foundational collapse. The lot was listed as vacant, ownership transferred to the county land bank. No active utility connections. No occupancy permit in the past decade. I pulled the satellite view. The image showed an empty lot, overgrown, with a gravel turnaround where the driveway had been. I pulled all calls from that address code over the past 6 years and found 11 recordings, each featuring different voices reporting intruders, all speaking with the same flat affect and reversed address format. Men, women, different ages, all of them calm. All of them reversing the numbers. Some said 7043 Belmont Road. Others said 7043 Belmont Drive or 7043 Belmont Court. The street name variants did not exist in our mapping system. I listened to all 11 calls in sequence. No dispatcher ever responded with more than a standard acknowledgement. No units were ever sent. Every call was marked, resolved with no action taken. When I escalated to my supervisor, she instructed me to flag the recordings for technical corruption and remove them from the review queue, but I made unauthorized copies to personal storage before deletion. She did not ask questions. She did not review the files herself. She told me to mark them as corrupted, remove them from the active database, and note the incident in the maintenance log under audio system malfunction. I complied. I also copied the files to a thumb drive and took them home. I am aware that was a violation of data handling policy. The following week, I was reassigned to daytime administrative duties without explanation, and my access to the audio archive system was restricted to read-only permissions. I was told the reassignment was part of a departmental restructuring. My supervisor did not meet with me. The notice came through email. I was given a desk in the records department, where I now process public information requests and file incident reports for storage. I no longer monitor calls. I no longer have access to live dispatch audio. When I attempted to log into the archive system to retrieve a file for a public records request, I found my credentials had been downgraded. I can see file names and timestamps. I cannot play recordings. I later learned through informal conversation that the address in question corresponds to a location that predates the current county mapping system and has no physical coordinates in our GPS database. A dispatcher I spoke with in the break room mentioned she had seen similar address codes in older files, back when the county used a different grid system in the 1970s. She said some of those addresses were never updated when the county converted to the enhanced 911 system in the early 2000s. She said dispatch supervisors were told to disregard calls from those codes, as they were considered legacy errors or system artifacts. She did not know why. She said it was in the training material when she started, but the section was removed a few years ago. The copied recordings no longer play audio on any device I have attempted, producing only steady static at exactly 60-second intervals, and I have been advised that further inquiry into archived calls from that sector is outside my operational scope. I have tried 3 different computers, 2 phones, and a standalone audio player. Every file produces the same result: 1 minute of static, then silence. I sent an email to my former supervisor asking if there was a decryption key or a format issue. She replied that the files were disposed of per protocol and that I should delete any remaining copies. She did not acknowledge that I had taken copies. She did not ask how I still had them. She told me the matter was closed. I deleted the files from my personal devices. I was told during my next performance review that my work was satisfactory and that I should focus on my current duties. No one has mentioned the calls since. The address code no longer appears in the system when I search for it. I do not know if it was removed or if my access level prevents me from seeing it. I have been instructed not to discuss the incident with other staff. This account is the only record I have made.